So as we all now know, Melbourne metropolitan area and Mitchell Shire are now back to stage 3 restrictions. So we need to understand what that means for real estate. And talking with one of our directors this week, he had a great saying. He said to me, "No auctions, no opens, no worries." And to a large extent, he's right. Only 30% of Melbourne homes are sold by auction anyway, so that means 70% have always been sold by private sales. So that's not a problem for us. And private inspections were how we used to do real estate. People who are as old as me can remember us always doing it that way. So going back to private inspections again is not a big problem. So let's have a look at the detail now of what it means for us. So 2 key points to make. The first point, over the past 4 months while we've been going through the toughest lockdown period and learning how to cope with all of the restrictions, the Barry Plant Network sold 2,172 properties in Victoria, and we leased a further 2,795 properties. So over the past 4 months, we've seen that people want to get on with the business of buying and selling property and renting property. And as an industry and as the Barry Plant Group, we've shown that we are ready and able to do that and do it easily. And the second key point, and this is really important, you are permitted to leave home for the purpose of inspecting a property by private appointment. And that applies to both properties that are for sale and properties that are for rent. We know there's been a lot of confusion about whether or not you're allowed to leave home to inspect a property, so it's really important that you're clear on that issue, and that is that you can leave home to inspect a property by private appointment within the greater metropolitan area and also Mitchell Shire. Now we know there are differences between that greater metropolitan area in Mitchell Shire and the rest of Victoria, so it's important that we go through and understand what those differences are, particularly for people who live on the fringe of Melbourne and the fringe of the restricted areas. If the property is in the restricted area, inspections must be by private appointments only, which means that the residents of the property must vacate the property for one of the 4 permitted reasons. A private inspection can only be 2 people inside the property at any one time. If the property is in a non-restricted area in regional Victoria, open for inspections can continue with a limit of 20 people for properties for sale and properties for rent, and on-site auctions are also permitted, again with a limit of 20 people attending. If you are a potential buyer or tenant and you are a resident of a restricted area, you are not permitted to attend an open inspection or an auction of a property in a non-restricted area. You must make a private appointment to inspect the property, and if you want to bid at auction, you must make arrangements with the agent to bid remotely or have someone from the non-restricted area attend the auction to bid on your behalf. So while the return to stage 3 lockdown is far from ideal, the reality is that over the past 4 months we've been able to help everyone who wants to buy, sell or rent achieve their real estate needs during this time. So I encourage you to talk to your local Barry Plant agent about whatever it is you need over the coming 6 weeks while we're back in lockdown. The Victorian real estate market is showing itself to be very resilient, and we're still seeing some great results across the Barry Plant Group. And in fact, in June this year, we sold more properties than we did in June last year. The regional areas have been really strong, so Geelong, Bendigo, Ballarat, Mildura, Shepparton, Benalla, and some of the areas surrounding Melbourne have all been really strong over the past few months. In Melbourne, we're still seeing a strong market performance, with the REIV reporting an auction clearance rate of 71% last weekend across the 292 auctions that were conducted, which is only just below the number of auctions conducted for the same weekend last year. And across the Barry Plant Group, we've seen some great results over the past week. Following the announcement of the lockdown last week, our Taylors Lakes office brought forward one of their auctions to Wednesday night and had a great result with 4 bidders pushing the price to $718,000, which was $18,000 above the reserve. In the west at Hoppers Crossing, they achieved an even stronger result. The vendor originally bought his home through our Werribee office back in 2003 for $240,000 and was delighted when the home sailed $47,000 above the reserve to sell for $572,000. And finally, we really saw the strength of the current market in Northcote, where an unrenovated 2-bedroom villa unit had over 100 buyer inspections in 2 weeks, so our agent moved it to an online auction last Thursday night, where there were 15 registered bidders who competed online to push the price to $770,000, which was $110,000 above the reserve. A truly amazing result. So as you can see, despite the challenging conditions, we're still seeing some really good results out there, and that's with the number of sales increasing to about the same level as this time last year. And don't forget, if you're thinking of selling, talk to your local Barry Plant agent about how we can promote your property in the largest selling newspaper in the country for only $75 plus GST.